Now that we've looked at some of the basic types in PHP, such as strings and numbers, we're ready to start looking at some more advanced programming concepts, like arrays. And arrays are going to be extremely useful for us, and we're going to want to spend a little bit of time making sure you understand them. So if you don't get it right off the bat, just take a little time, watch the movie a second time to make sure you have a good foundation in what arrays are and how they work. Let's create a new work area for ourselves first of all. And we'll do that by doing a save as on our floats PHP, and we'll just make it arrays.php, also in our PHP sandbox area. And I'll change the title of it to be arrays. That way we'll always have this to refer to as well. And I'll go ahead and get rid of all of those lines of code so we're ready to start. Now, you can think of an array like a series of variables that we can assign values to. Or maybe it's more helpful if you even think of it like an expandable file folder where you can put data in each of the pockets. There are no limits to how many pockets it can have, at least none that you'll need to worry about. And a pocket can contain anything that a variable can contain, a string, a number, or even another array. And then you can reference whatever's in that pocket by its position inside the array instead of by its variable name. So with variables, we asked for a value by asking for the variable name and having it echo. Instead, we're going to reference an array and tell it which position inside the array. So let's go ahead and create a simple array to get an idea of how this works. I'll start a PHP tag, and I'll create array1, and I'm going to define an array by using array with parentheses, and I'll just say 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. And then we'll put a semicolon at the end, and we've now defined our first array. That's all there is to it. And we've put into each of the pockets of the array those numbers. And because we then assign the whole array to a variable, we can call back for the information that's in the pockets. So we can have array1, and the way we call what's in the pockets is going to be with square brackets, and we'll ask for what's in pocket number 1. I'll put a semicolon at the end, and of course we'll need to echo that out to the browser. So let's see what that gives us. I'll save that file, switch back to our browser, and let's load up the arrays page we just created. And it gave us 8. Now wait a minute. If you go back and look, 8 is what we thought was in our second pocket. And that brings up a very important, essential part of arrays that we have to always keep in mind. Arrays are numbered starting from 0. The first pocket is 0. The second pocket is 1. So it'll take a little bit of getting used to if you haven't worked with arrays before, but that's always how it's going to work. The first pocket is 0. So if we actually ask for what's in that first pocket by putting 0 there, and we come back and reload it in our browser, you'll see we get 4, as we expected. So this is really essential. You really want to make sure you just drill this into your head, write it down somewhere, put a Post-it note on your computer if you have to. But the first pocket in an array, the first item in the array, the first value, is always going to be referred to as being 0. Now, as I said, we can put all sorts of value into our arrays. So let's go ahead and create something that's a little crazier now. Let's say we're going to create array number 2, and that array is going to be defined as an array, and inside it we'll put 6, and the word fox, and the word dog, and let's make another array inside. Why not? X, and Y, and let's make the last one be Z. And you'll want to make sure that if you have several arrays nested that you have the right number of parentheses around it. You'll see that TextMate helpfully gave me the closing parentheses, but you'll want to make sure that all the starting and ending parentheses match. And then I've got the semicolon at the end. And the very last thing I need to do is echo that array back. So this is going to be array number 2. And this time, let's ask for what's in pocket number 2. And if you stop and think about it, you can look at the array above and guess which value it's going to give me. Let's go back to our browser. We'll reload it, and it gave me back dog. And that's exactly what we would expect. So what if we'd instead asked the array to give us what was in pocket number 3? Let's try it. We'll do save. And when we reload it, it comes back and says, hey, it's an array. It doesn't give us any of the values inside the array. It gives us the array itself. So we could then take that array and assign it to a variable and work with it if we wanted to. If we want to get what's inside of that array within the array, we can do that by putting a second set of brackets around it. So let's say this time we want to get back what's in pocket number 1. And you know which one that's going to give us. We'll save it. We'll go back. We'll reload it. And sure enough, it gave us the Y. So what it did was it echoed back from array number 2, the third pocket, which was another array, and then got the first pocket, which was Y, and returned that back to our browser. So you can see how we can start calling things that are inside arrays. Now we can also put things into pockets in the same way. Let's say that instead of dog, we wanted to have cat. We can then say set array 2 pocket number 3 equal to, and we'll just make it the string cat. And now, if we ask it to echo back to us what's in that pocket, of course I need the echo at the front, don't I? There we go. Let's put a nice BR in here just so we can make it all on a nice new line. We hit reload, you'll see that cat is now what's in that pocket. So we can start to put information in and out of arrays, pull it out when we need it, and then we can take this whole long string of information and assign it to one single variable. And that's the power of arrays. The other thing that's powerful about arrays is that they're kept in the same order unless we change it. So the first pocket will always be what we put in the first pocket and the second pocket and so on. So we can actually start to maintain lists of information that are kept in a specific order. That's going to be really useful when we start working with databases, because then we can have something like a set of students, and the students can be in an array, and we can have students that are in order by last name, let's say. And we can go to the first student and then the second student and so on. So hopefully now you understand the power of what arrays can do for you. Now it can be a little bit cumbersome to try and remember which number pockets are in. Sometimes we're less interested in what order it's in and more interested in what kind of data we're dealing with. And that's why we're able to give our pockets labels. Now, the pockets that I keep referring to are not actually called pockets. It's a position in the array. And what's in that pocket is the value. So the pockets that I've been referring to are actually not technically called pockets. They are positions in the array. And what's at each position is a value. We can actually assign a key to that value. So that works like a label. So think back to our file folder for a second and imagine that instead of just having information in a certain pocket, imagine that we put a label on the top of that pocket that said what was inside of it. Let's say we had a file folder full of our bills. We could have our phone bill in one, our electricity bill in another, and we could label it according to each one. And then instead of asking for that information to come back to us according to which pocket it's in, we could say retrieve my phone bill, and it would pull the phone bill out of that position, and you could work with it. Let's try assigning keys to what's called an associative array. Let's go ahead and make a new BR tag here. And let's make our first one. And it's going to be array 3 equal to array, just like before. Okay, the structure should be very familiar by now. But instead, I'm going to put in first name with an arrow, and that's an equal sign with a greater than. But it looks like an arrow, and that's what it functions like. It's first name referencing Kevin. So now we've created a key value pair. First name is the key, Kevin is the value. And we can do the same thing for last name. There we go. So now we have an array where there's something in the first pocket, and what's in that first pocket is Kevin. So we can ask for what's inside that array, almost the same as we did before, with array 3, and then in brackets, but this time we'll ask for first name instead of asking for the position. Makes sense? We're asking for the label, not the position. And PHP happily will use that instead of the number. So let's load that up in the browser. And you'll see that sure enough, it works. It returned what was in that first pocket. Now, incidentally, if you had tried it with the number instead, it would not work because it's an associative array. It's not going to worry about what those numbers are. The one exception to that is if you had actually made this first key be a number, which it could be. That would allow you to call it by number still. But we're going to want to use it by a label that's not just a number, it's a string. So we're going to leave it this way. And of course, we can also put together something like this that will give us back the first name and last name together. There we go. And we'll copy in last name down here. And we can guess what that will give us. It'll concatenate them together. Now we can also change the value of what's in that array the same way that we did when we were dealing with numbers and indexes for the other array. Instead, we'll say PHP array 3, put the brackets, and let's say first name equal to, and let's make it Larry. There we go. And then I'll just copy this line here, drop it down here, and we'll put in a BR tag just to make this nice and pretty. I'll save it. So now it's going to echo back the original first and last name, then set the new name, and then echo back the new version to us. And sure enough, when we come back, you see that we get both the old value of the array and the updated version. There's one last tip that I want to give you about arrays before we look at array functions, and that is that if you want to see what's inside an array, there's one nice, really easy way to do that, and this is really helpful in debugging. You remember when we asked for array number 2, and we asked it what was in pocket number 3, and it gave us back something that just said array, and we didn't think that was very helpful to us. If we instead issue the command print_r, and that's for print readable, and asked for it to give us array number 2 in that form, the whole array that we came up with earlier. And I'll save it and reload it. You see it comes back and it gives us the contents in a readable form. And even better, if we go ahead and put the pre-tags around it, which is an HTML command that says don't apply any formatting, actually, render it as it comes out with all the spaces and everything in there. And then we come back and reload it. That way we'll get an even better look of what's inside our array, and that can be really powerful and helpful when we're debugging. But now that we have the fundamentals of arrays down, we're ready to look at what some array functions can do for us so that we can start to manipulate them and work with them and get the most out of them.